Don't you remember me? The homeless man asked. Her heart stopped cold. It was one of those evenings when the city looked tired, the sky a smudge of gray, the streets slick from a half-hearted rain. I remember clutching my umbrella, rushing toward the last bus home. The air smelled of wet asphalt and cheap cigarettes, and my mind was already somewhere else. Tomorrow's meeting, bills, the life I'd built that felt sturdy but hollow. That's when I heard it. "Spare some change, miss." The voice was rough, almost hesitant. I didn't even look up. I'd grown used to it. The endless hands, the tired pleas that followed every corner of downtown. So, I kept walking, pretending not to hear. But then came the words that made me freeze. "Don't you remember me?" The way he said it, quiet, trembling, but deliberate, sent a chill through my spine. Something about that voice tugged at a corner of memory I didn't want to unfold. I turned slowly. He was sitting on the sidewalk, back against a brick wall, stained dark by rain. His clothes were soaked through, his beard unkempt, and his fingers clutched a small paper cup half filled with coins. But it was his eyes that stopped me, pale blue, too clear to belong to a stranger. I'm sorry," I stammered. "Have we met?" A faint smile touched his cracked lips. "Yeah, you used to sit by me every morning. Third row, near the window." My breath caught. For a moment I saw it. Sunlight streaming through dusty blinds, the chatter of students, the faint smell of coffee. College, the lecture hall. "And him, Daniel?" I whispered. He nodded weakly. "Took you long enough." I stepped closer, my umbrella tilting as raindrops splattered across my coat. "My God, Daniel. What happened to you?" He gave a half-laugh, half-sigh. "Life, I guess. It doesn't always take the turns you expect." I hadn't seen him in over 12 years. Back then, Daniel was the kind of guy who lit up every room. Sarcastic, brilliant, always one joke away from trouble. He used to draw little sketches of me during lectures, slide them under my notebook and whisper, "Art is my excuse for not paying attention." And now, he was sitting on the curb, shaking from the cold. I crouched down, heart pounding. "You disappeared after junior year." "I thought you transferred?" He shook his head slowly. "No, my mom died that summer. I couldn't afford tuition after that. Tried to make it work, but..." His voice cracked. Things fell apart. I felt something tighten in my chest. Guilt, maybe. Or shame. "Why didn't you call me?" I asked quietly. "You could have asked for help." He smiled faintly. "I did, once, but you changed your number." I froze. That was true. I'd gotten a new phone that year. A fresh start, I told myself. I never thought about who might have been trying to reach me. "I'm sorry," I said, my throat thick. He shrugged. "Don't be. Everyone's got their own storm." I got lost in mine. The rain picked up, falling harder now. My hair clung to my cheeks, my knees soaked from kneeling on the wet concrete. "Come on," I said. "Let's get you inside somewhere warm." He hesitated. "I don't want to ruin your evening." "You won't. Please." He looked at me for a long second before nodding. I helped him up, his hand rough and trembling. Together we walked toward a small 24-hour diner across the street. The bell above the door jingled as we stepped in, drawing a few glances from tired night shift workers sipping coffee in their booths. The waitress eyed Daniel suspiciously, but I gave her a steady look. "A bowl of soup and coffee for him, please. And whatever special you have left." When the food arrived, Daniel ate quietly, almost reverently. Watching him, I realized how long it must have been since he'd had a proper meal. I stirred my own coffee, trying to find words. "Where are you staying these days?" He smiled without looking up. "Wherever I can. Shelters, mostly. Sometimes the park benches are quieter." The casual way he said it broke me. "Daniel," I whispered, "you don't have to live like this." He glanced up, eyes tired but kind. "You think I haven't tried?" "There's a point when the world stops listening. After a while, you stop asking." The diner's hum filled the silence between us, the clatter of plates, the low chatter of a radio playing an old song. I remembered the last time I saw him, laughing under the campus oak tree, sketchbook on his lap, telling me he wanted to paint something that would outlast him. He'd always been a dreamer, maybe too much of one. "You were going to be an artist," I said softly. He smiled. "Still am, only now my canvas is the street. I draw with chalk. It washes away by morning, but for a few hours it's something beautiful." My eyes burned. "You can't keep living like this. Let me help you, please." He shook his head slowly. "I've made peace with it." "No, Daniel." "Don't say that." He leaned back, studying me. "You always cared too much, even back then." The way he said it, gentle, almost admiring, made my heart ache. I bit my lip. "You still remember that?" He grinned faintly. "You used to twirl your pen every time you were nervous. Now it's your ring." I glanced down at my hand, the small silver band glinting under the diner's yellow light. "You notice everything, don't you?" "Only the things that matter." We sat there for a long time, caught between past and present, strangers and something else. When he finally stood, I did too. "Let me at least walk you to a shelter. It's cold tonight." He hesitated, but the exhaustion in his eyes made him relent. As we stepped outside, the rain had softened to a mist. Streetlights painted the world in gold and gray. "Thank you," he murmured. "For stopping." "For remembering?" "I almost didn't," I admitted. "And that terrifies me." He gave a weak smile. "It's okay. You did eventually. That's what counts." We stopped at the corner, where the shelter's flickering sign glowed faintly in the distance. He turned toward me. "Claire, do you ever think about what might have been?" I nodded. "All the time," he sighed. "I used to think I'd run into you again. I just didn't think it'd be like this." My throat tightened. "Maybe this is how it was meant to be." He smiled at that, then a small, tired, grateful smile. "Maybe." He started to walk toward the shelter door, then paused and looked back. "You were the last person who ever believed in me. I just wanted you to know that." The door swung open and he disappeared inside. I stood there for a long while, the rain whispering against the pavement, my heart heavier than it had been in years. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his face. That quiet resignation, that flicker of old warmth still buried beneath years of pain. Something deep inside me knew this wasn't the end of the story. It was only the beginning. The next morning, I woke up early, though it didn't feel like I'd really slept. My thoughts were still tangled with Daniel's face, his voice, the way he'd smiled like he'd already made peace with a world that forgot him. At breakfast, I pushed my coffee aside untouched. The city outside my window was just waking up, horns blaring, heels clicking, the same mechanical rhythm I'd built my life around. But for the first time in years, I felt offbeat, like I was watching from the outside. By noon, I couldn't take it anymore. I took the day off work, told my boss I wasn't feeling well, and drove back downtown, to that same street where I'd first seen him. The wall he'd been sitting against was empty. The paper cup was gone, just a dark stain where the rain had dried unevenly. I felt a pang of panic. I went to the diner across the street, the same one where we'd sat the night before. The waitress recognized me instantly. "The man you were with last night," she said before I could even ask. "He left early this morning. Told me to tell you thanks. Did he say where he was going?" She shook her head. "Just said he had something to finish." Something to finish. I stepped outside, staring at the cracked pavement, the passing cars, the distant hum of sirens. That's when I saw it, faint lines of chalk near the curb. A drawing. It was smudged by rain, but I could still make it out. A girl sitting by a window, a pen in her hand, sunlight spilling over her shoulder. The details were rough, but the expression, that quiet determination, was unmistakable. It was me. And underneath, in messy letters, "For the one who remembered." My throat closed. I crouched there on the sidewalk, tracing the lines with my fingertips, wishing I could tell him it wasn't too late, that the world hadn't really forgotten him. That night, I decided I couldn't just let him disappear again. I started calling local shelters, one after another. Some recognized the name, most didn't. Finally, on the fourth call, a tired-sounding man said, "Yeah, Daniel's here." "You a friend?" I let out a shaky breath. "Yes, please tell him Claire's coming." When I arrived, the shelter was quieter than I expected. A few people reading, a few sleeping, the smell of soup drifting from the kitchen. Daniel was sitting near the back, sketching something on a scrap of paper. He looked up as I approached, surprised. "You didn't make it hard?" I lied softly. "You left me a masterpiece out there." He smiled, embarrassed. "Guess old habits die hard." I sat across from him. "Daniel, listen. I have a friend who runs an art nonprofit. They help struggling artists, people who've been through rough times. They give grants, studio space." He shook his head before I could finish. "Claire, don't!" "I'm serious. You have real talent. People need to see it." He looked down at his sketch, a streetlight, a rain puddle, a stray cat curled beneath it. "People don't look, Claire. They just walk by." I leaned forward. "Then make them look again." He stared at me for a long moment, and something shifted in his eyes, doubt softening into a fragile hope. "I wouldn't even know where to start," he murmured. I smiled. "That's okay. I do." Over the next few weeks, I helped Daniel reconnect with the world. We went to the nonprofit office where the coordinator, a woman named Miriam, was immediately taken by his sketches. They gave him a spot in a community art program and a small stipend. The first few days he was quiet, awkward, unsure. But slowly the Daniel I remembered began to return. His laughter, his stubbornness, his habit of losing himself completely when he drew. He started painting again, first in small bursts, then with purpose. One night, he showed me a canvas of a city street in the rain, lit only by reflections of neon lights. In the corner, a woman stood holding an umbrella, Her face turned towards something unseen. "It's you," he said simply. I stared at it for a long moment, my eyes stinging. "It's beautiful," he shrugged. "It's real." Weeks turned into months. His first small exhibit opened in a community gallery downtown. The walls were lined with his work, quiet, raw, full of pain and beauty. When I saw people standing there, whispering, pointing, even crying, I realized this was what he'd meant back in college, when he said he wanted to paint something that would outlast him. During the opening, a local art critic approached him. "Your work has soul," she said. "It feels lived," Daniel smiled shyly. "It has been." After everyone left, we sat on the gallery steps, watching the city lights flicker across the glass. "Do you ever think," he said softly, "if I hadn't been there last night, if you hadn't stopped?" "I try not to," I whispered. "Because I did stop." He nodded, smiling faintly. "You always did know how to find the right moment," I laughed through tears. "And you always knew how to turn pain into art." We sat in silence, two people from different worlds, bound by something as simple and complicated as remembrance. Before we left, he handed me a small folded paper. "It's a thank you," he said, "but don't open it here." Later that night, alone in my apartment, I unfolded the note. Inside was a sketch, me kneeling in the rain, holding out my hand to him on the sidewalk. Beneath it, in careful handwriting, were the words, "Sometimes, remembering someone is the only miracle they need." I cried for a long time, not from sadness, but from the weight of what it meant to be seen, to be remembered and to remember back. Months later, Daniel's art would make headlines in a local paper. From streets to gallery, the man who painted hope. He refused interviews, saying he wanted the art to speak for itself. But he sent me a text that morning, the first I'd ever received from him since college. "You once said the world forgets too easily. Thank you for proving it can also remember." I smiled through the tears, whispering into the quiet room, "You were never forgotten, Daniel. You just needed someone to look up." If this story touched you, remember, a small act of kindness can rewrite someone's entire story. Subscribe to Tale Story House for more stories that heal the soul.